In this video, we are going to learn about another hook which is available in React, which is called useLayout. Now, useLayout is a hook which is rarely used, and you will very rarely need to use it anywhere. But why I am discussing this? Because it is very much closely related to useEffect. Its syntax is uh, almost exactly equal to useEffect with a very slight difference, and that particular difference is sometimes asked in the interviews, sometimes in the JavaScript interviews. So let me introduce you to use layout effect. Okay, so as mentioned, like use effect, its syntax is exactly similar, which means that if you use layout effect, then its syntax will be also exactly same, that you pass a callback function like this, which is essentially an effect, and that effect runs at some point of time, and that is the difference, that when that runs. Other than that, the difference is nothing. The dependencies array is whatever, if any variable it depends on, that effect depends on, then that particular variable you need to put in the dependency array. The rest everything is same. Okay, so like use effect, let's say you are printing something here, and let's say some count variable is there, and this is a dependency on count. Then you can see that this thing is, so let's start with 0 only. So initially there is a count variable which is 0, and then when you click that, then it can it will increase and change the count. That's it, right? But you can see that this thing is 0, and as you click, then all the variables are printed, right? In fact, if you, instead of use effect, if you use layout effect, okay, then also you'll see that exactly the same thing is happening. So you might be thinking that, yes, so what is the difference? Okay, we'll discuss two major differences, but let's firstly discuss the first difference. So like use effect, let's say we simply print A here and we print B here. Okay, so here you will see that yeah, so let me run in prod mode so that it is more clear. Okay, so essentially what will happen, that this rendering will happen, the DOM will be created from JSX, whatever, this rendering will happen, and then effect will run, right? So you will see that. So firstly, this is normally use effect, right? So B will be printed and then A will be printed, right? Right now it is not dependent on count or something, but anyways, it will be like that only. So firstly B is printed, then A is printed. Okay, now instead of use effect, if you use layout effect, then also you'll see that when this component re-renders, then this whole function runs, and use layout effect is also running after that. So you'll see that still the order is B and A. Okay, so in that sense, there's not much a difference. There is a slight difference in the orderings of layout effect and effect. So use effect and use layout effect. So let's say this is A, this is B, and this is C. And there is a small difference if somebody asks you this thing. So essentially what happens, that obviously when this component is rendered again sometime, then and this will apply to everything. So let's say there is some dependency array, then also the same thing will apply, but I am just talking about the first render. The same thing will apply for subsequent renders also. So what is happening is that this whole thing will render, that is fine, which means again C will run first, but after that, let's see. But after that you will see that B is there and then A is there. Okay, so which is saying that firstly use layout thing is printing, and then use layout effect thing is printing, and then use effect is running. Okay, and so this is the main difference. This is the first difference, and this is basically a essentially just a corollary of the actual difference between use layout effect and use effect. Actually, the difference is that, as the name suggests, use layout effect. So this is generally use layout effect is generally used to compute the layout things before actually the render is painted on the in the browser. So what is happening is that, let's say you have rendered something, right? You have rendered something. Now use effect runs when this rendered thing is inserted into the DOM and is painted. Then after that use effect runs, but that is not where use layout effect runs. Use layout effect runs like this, that yeah, this thing will be rendered and the actual DOM calculations will be done, and now our DOM is very much aware that what is the size, width, height, what is the layout of everything. And then after that you can do something in use layout effect to make slight changes into this, and whatever you do changes in this, firstly synchronously that changes is applied and then that thing is painted. So that is the actual difference, that after DOM calculation, the effect runs after the paint, the first after the paint in the browser, the whatever the DOM is created, that is painted in the browser, and after that use effect runs. Use layout effect runs before the actual thing is painted in the browser. Painted means that whatever your DOM is there, that is actually visible in the browser as per the new things. Whatever you have changed, let's say some count is changed, then here you are printing count. Let's say I click something, right? Then this thing is new DOM, right? So whatever the DOM calculation is done and whatever it is to be painted on the browser, this thing runs just before the paint, which means that it waits for that. And that's why it is sometimes harmful to use this, because if you don't know that when it is running, then unnecessarily if you do everything inside layout effect, then it will unnecessarily make your this app sluggish. And that's why this thing should be rarely used. Most of the times you should only use effect. But if there is some specific requirements, so for example some height width calculation of some particular element, some scroll positioning you want to calculate before you actually want to paint the DOM, so though in those rare situations you might need to use this, but otherwise it is not needed, right? So essentially you created a DOM, you have the complete layout, you do some calculation. If you do want to change something just before it renders, renders in the sense that obviously this component has rendered, but actually that has not painted. Okay, just before it paints the browser, just before that you can use something, and this code will be synchronously run, and it will be painting will be waiting for this to happen, and then only once this is completed, then only the actual browser painting will happen. So we'll take a small example and discuss that on that thing. Okay, so for that, let's do normal npm start. Now you know the ordering of this, so let's just let me comment this, or rather remove this also. And now we are going to do a couple of things. So let's say we are interested in the position of this button as the count changes. So initially this is 0, but let's say as we change something, some count, then let's say we want to change the position of next. Just an example, you can have any other example also, but I'm just trying to somehow show the difference between use effect and use layout effect. Okay, so for that matter, let's have some id, let's say is equal to my button. Okay, and let's say its id is equal to, let's say simply my div. Obviously you should not use names like this globally, but anyways I'm just using for example, so you can use it. So my button and my div. Okay, my div is there and then my button is there. Now what I'm going to do is that this my button thing, I'm going to make its position absolute. Okay, and you understand that Okay, so yeah, so this my button thing is there, and let's uh, make some color around it. So let's say border 1 pixel solid red, something like that. Okay, that is fine. And now let's make its top, let's say 50 pixel. Okay, so you can see that this thing is going above, and that is because any position absolute will, this top and this thing will be calculated relative to the first position relative. So if you don't give it, then it will take relative to parent. So rather I will give my div this position relative. So hope you have understood actually. And now you see this position is relative to my div. This 50 pixel position is relative to this, which means that, let me write it here also. So let's make it purple, and I'm trying to show this. So this starting from you understand that its height can be anything. Now let's say height 200 pixel, doesn't matter. So what is happening is that this this its top is relative to this 50 pixel, is relative to here. If you don't give this thing position relative, then this top 50 pixel is relative to the browser, this whole parent thing, this which will essentially go to root HTML. Okay, so you don't want that. That's why I just made this relative. So the rule is that whatever position absolute is there, it keeps on going to the parent, and the first element on which it sees relative, the calculation of top is done based on that. And now I believe that this thing is no more needed, so that is fine. But yeah, this is how it is. Now I'll hide this also for simplicity. Okay, and what I will do is that position top I am removing for now, but let's add, you can add here also. So let's say style top, so let's say 50 pixel. Okay, so now you can see that this top gap is 50 pixel. If you remove this, then that gap is gone, right. But I want to do that based on count. So as I change count, I want to do that, right. Now obviously you can do the same thing, like for example style thing, this whole thing, this 50, you can have a variable, and as you change, then what you can do is that you can have a variable which decides that whether it is 100 or 50 or 0, and based on that on particular variable also you can do that, right. But the problem is that when you change a particular style variable, then it renders again, right. What if I want to do that in layout effect, so that if my condition is met, then I will not do so. In use effect, what will happen, that it will firstly render, let's say 0. So let's say I want to do that when this state variable, then this count variable is 5 or more, then it should be 50, and if it is less than 5, then it should be 0. This nothing should be there. Okay, if that is my requirement, then let's say initially if your is 5, if 5 or 10, then if you do that in use effect, then firstly it will be rendered with 0, and in the next render this will become 50, because basically you are checking the condition, something like that, that if count is greater than or equal to 5, let's say, then I am going to change this variable, and it will do a re-render, right. I don't want that. What I want is that somehow we have to uh, we have to have a DOM reference of it, and do this on the fly, and we'll see that how that will affect in you will use that in use layout. But firstly we will simply do it in use effect. Okay, so we'll see this later. Let's comment it for now, but right now let's have a simple reference called, let's say, button ref, so that we get the actual reference of the button. Okay, initially it is null. Now I have a button reference. Let's use it here. Okay, and now what I want to do is that button ref dot current dot style dot top is equal to 50 pixel. And now you can see that a dependency is needed, right? So if I don't have a dependency, then you can see that even if it is more than 5, nothing is changing, because this effect is not rerunning, right? So I want to add a dependency here because that count variable is being used, right? So now you will see that if the count will become greater than equal to 5, as soon as it becomes 5, then the button has top 50 pixel, otherwise it is nothing, which means that it will be 0, right? So right now there is no gap, but as soon as the count becomes 5, then you can see that this is becoming, the gap is coming. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you. Now let's see the difference if I add here, okay, or I do the same thing in, let's say, instead of this I use in use layout effect. Okay, then the same thing will happen here also, right? So what is the difference? What is the difference? It looks like there is no difference, right? Now let's start with 10. So earlier when I incremented, then only when it reached 5, then only it came somewhat bottom, right? But right now let's say I'm already using 10, and now if I save and refresh, then you see that yeah, it is already 10. It is already 10, which means that it should, at the first render only, it should be here, and that looks fine, right? But happening of that, which means that at the first pending only it is here, that will only happen in use layout. Okay, if you use this thing, then what is happening, that when 10 is there, then at the first render only, what is count? 10. Okay, so anyways this is like first render, so doesn't matter what is the dependency array, anyway this effect is going to run. So what is count? 10 is greater than 5, which means that at the first render only I should get 50. But with use effect that will not happen. Why? Because use effect is not running even before pending, it is running after pending, which means that firstly, with, even if the count is 10, which means that this condition is satisfied, but firstly this thing is rendered, inserted into the DOM, painted in the DOM, and then after that this use effect is running, and it is deciding that yeah, this condition is meeting, and that's why I should make this top 50 pixel and put a gap. So essentially what is happening is that if I have use effect instead of use layout effect, then firstly it will be up, it is painted, and then as soon as it is painted, after that this thing is running, and then it is coming down. Okay, but if you refresh, then you see just one time you saw this, suddenly it came below, right? So that is what I was saying, that sometimes that it is so fast that it is not visible, but it is firstly rendering here and then it is coming down. Okay, but that is not happening here. Here in the first render itself, it is first time only it is rendering here. Okay, so what I will do is that in case of use effect, I'll try to show you in slow motion that what is happening. So you can see it will be something like this in slow motion, that initially the rendering happened here and quickly it went below. Let's see again. So it rendered above and quickly it became to the bottom. But if instead of use effect, we will use layout effect, then even at the first render, the button is directly rendered below. It is not coming from top to bottom. So I believe now you have a fair idea that what is the difference between use effect and use layout effect. Though you should mostly always use effect, and if you understand that use layout effect can solve your problem, then in rare situations you can use layout effect also. But generally use effect will be to our rescue most of the times. Okay, so that will be all for this video. Thanks a lot.